What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You've tuned in live to our first Fantasy Football Weekly presented to you by StatlinesMatter. I'm your host, Mark E. Stewart, here with my partner in crime, as always, Mr. Rob Hunter Jr. And live from Chicago, we have Chicago Bear insider and fantasy football and football expert, Anthony Lukasik.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to our first live show. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Thank you for joining us, Anthony.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, guys. It's an honor to be here, man.
Chi-Town Tony in the building.
You go by Anthony?
Listen,
I prefer Anthony usually, but you know, it's whatever. You can call me Susan if it makes you happy, man.
That's funny. Well, Anthony, I'm gonna come to you first because as a Bears fan, I know you have some intimate knowledge of the Green Bay Packers. Our first matchup that we're going to focus on this week is Green Bay traveling down to Tampa Bay. You have a 1-1 Green Bay team going against a 2-0 Tampa Bay team. What's your take on that game as it relates to fantasy football?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough game. You know, Rodgers is still struggling to get it going with his squad. His receivers are still a little bit young. You know, no receiver had more than 3 catches last week. He's spreading the ball around a lot. I think 7 different receivers caught a target. 8 different receivers got targeted. You know, the Bucs defense, they're top 10 in both against the run and the pass. And so I'd say the Green Bay could lean on the run like usual. But Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are going to have some tough sledding next week against the Bucs defense. Vita Vea is back in town. It's a completely revamped looking team.
Who do you like on Green Bay from a fantasy perspective besides Aaron Rodgers? Is it just the running backs?
Yeah, I really don't. If you if you have Aaron Jones, you probably have to play him. I would just temper expectations on him this week. And, you know, A.J. Dillon might get a lot of work trying to wear down that defense between the tackles. But, you know, there'll be some volume, but not a lot of, high average yards per carry. You know, this Tampa Bay team has got a really solid defense. I'm not expecting much out of the Green Bay offense. Maybe Robert Tonyan, if you need a tight end play, might be a decent shot.
Now, Rob, on the flip side of that game, what about on the Tampa Bay side? They've dealt with some injuries. They're going to have a suspension with Mike Evans. What's your take on the fantasy implication in that game from Tampa Bay's perspective?
Well, this game is just not just to piggyback off what Anthony said, there's not a lot to chew on this game. The over-under is 41.5. You got Brady, who still hasn't managed to get it going just yet. Mike Evans is suspended this game. So they got question marks with Julio Jones, Godwin. You may look to, if you've got, for a season long, if you've got Leonard Fournette, you got to play him. He's second in the league in snaps. Last week, I believe he saw 24 carries, 26 total touches, including 2 catches. So if you have Leonard Fournette, that's a guy that you're going to play. But it's just not a lot to chew on. Now, this is a game from a viewership standpoint. Of course, you want to watch Aaron Rodgers, you want to watch Tom Brady. But honestly, this is what I think. I think until Giselle is back in the stadium, in the box, I think Tom Brady has the potential to struggle. He's got a little bit of the Rocky Balboa thing going on when he was training for the second fight with Apollo, where it wasn't going right. He couldn't catch the chicken because, Adrian didn't support him. And then when she woke up from the coma and said when, it came on. And I think that if Giselle is in the stadium, Tom can go for 3 bills and 3 touchdowns. But I think that, just the early part of the early struggles that you see right now, it's a stay away from me from a DFS standpoint. If you've got Leonard Fournette, you play him. If you're looking at the other side with Green Bay, that is a real timeshare. You've got Aaron Jones, who's leading in snap percentage, but last week it was Dillon who led with the carry. So you got a running back out there who's, you see him on the field, but when it's time to run the ball, at least last week they deferred to Dillon. So to me, it's a big cluster. If now Randall Cobb missed out on practice today, he didn't practice today because of illness. That may open the hole for Romeo Doubs, a receiver that Aaron Rodgers really high on in camp. And he'll have a low salary. He's $3,800 on DraftKings. If you stash him in season long, maybe you give him a try. But again, like Anthony was saying, the defenses here are really, for me, the story of the weekend in this game. And from a viewership perspective, obviously, you got your headliners. So I know I gave you more than the Tampa side of things, but I was trying to find an angle. I just couldn't find one.
Well, I think the angle for most football fans is simply going to be watching Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Famer, going against Tom Brady, the greatest to ever do it. So I think if nothing else, we're going to get that in the that matchup in the game. So that's going to be fun to watch.
Yes, you've got the marquee names, but from how you going to help me with my fantasy? If you got Leonard, I think you play him. But I think you could sit all of Green Bay's receivers, and potentially you could sit all of Tampa's receivers.
Okay, well, I'm going to stay with you, Rob. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anthony.
Well, I was going to say, with Evans out, that certainly hurts Tom Brady. The health of Chris Godwin and Julio Jones is both in question. But don't forget about Russell Gage and Brashad Perryman. Those guys kind of stepped up.
Perryman is the only one that has any has had any, I guess you would say, caught any balls from him. And then you got Kimro, who's actually been getting some snaps, who should get some looks this weekend with Mike Evans out. So those are deep plays. Yes, Russell Gage and Brashad Perryman. I mean, if you want, but I would think from a DFS perspective, that's a GPP play. That's a tournament.
Okay, well, Rob,
it's a tournament play.
Rob, let me keep it with you. As we move to our next game, we have two 2-0 teams facing off against each other. That both the offense looks explosive in their first, particularly in this past week, but Buffalo's looked explosive going back to last year. What's your take on this game? Because I would imagine there's fantasy implications on both sides. You got a lot of explosive players. Give us this look on this game from the Buffalo side.
Well, from the Buffalo side, I think you play. It really for me comes down to two players: Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. Josh Allen has 8 total touchdowns in 2 games, 7 passing, 1 rushing. And Stephon Diggs has been, I believe he's averaging 11.5 targets per game. I mean, those are the guys that, the reason why I stay away from the run game, because obviously it's a timeshare. That's the thing that you want to avoid when you're playing season long or if you're playing DFS. You got James Cook getting carries, you got Singletary getting carries, and you got Zach Moss getting, I believe they're all getting single-digit carries, with the leading rusher probably Allen most games. So from a fantasy perspective, I would, Josh Allen, and I know that those are obvious plays. Now, if Gabriel doesn't play, then maybe you bump up a guy like McKenzie. Maybe you take a look at him, especially given the short week. But for me, it just boils down to those two guys on the Buffalo side.
And what about you, Anthony? What's your take on this game? Give us a little bit of insight on Miami and what they might be bringing to the game from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are barn burners. They're calling Tua Tagovailoa the animal handler with the cheetah and the penguin. It's a fun show down there. They put it together during the offseason, and, man, they give them the weapons. So far, it's working, guys. Look, I expect Buffalo to put up some points on these guys, which means Miami's going to have to put up some points. The O-line of Miami's good. Buffalo's got a heck of a pass rush. They got 9 sacks in the season already, 5 INTs. It's going to be tough, but, you could probably start all pieces here in Miami. The only question marks that I really have are between Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert out in the backfield. We don't really know how that's going to shake out right now. Chase Edmonds got the start in week 1, Raheem Mostert in week 2. So we'll see. But as far as Tua and his pass catchers go, I'm all in. Let's go.
Is there any indication that you're hearing from your sources about who's going to be the lead dog in the backfield for the Miami Dolphins? Because they've gone both ways.
Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert getting the lion's share of the workload last week was a bit of a surprise. And so I'd like to say Edmonds, but we'll see. Mostert didn't look great. So, we're going to, I would say stay away from him this week and just kind of wait to see how that plays out. Remember, the first 3 weeks of the season are always the craziest. Things are bouncing everywhere. We don't have a pattern yet.
Yeah, I would think that that with Mostert having familiarity with that system, that eventually it'll be his job and he will get some lanes to run because they have so many receivers that can get down the field. I think on a long-term level, I think he'll be an answer there, if not this week.
See, I'm kind of leaning the other way. I think he's the short-term solution. They like Chase Edmonds' burst on the outside of the zone scheme. Mike McDaniel does have the history with Raheem Mostert. I think that's why they want to use him early and let Chase Edmonds kind of acclimate himself to the system.
That's fair. I can totally see that, but we'll see. Because I've never been a big fan of Chase Edmonds, even though I know he was productive at his last stop in Arizona. But I think when Mostert got a chance to play and was healthy, he was effective in San Francisco.
But he's getting a little older now. But yeah, it's hard to trust Chase Edmonds as a 3-down back for sure.
No, I definitely feel you on that. This is going to be, I think, the marquee game of the week. It'll be interesting to see if Tua can have the same type of success or similar success that he had against Baltimore. This is a much different defense, and Buffalo has shut down some good offenses. They shut down the Rams in the first game, so it can really go either way. But it looked like Miami was unstoppable, with those guys getting past the DBs. So we'll see.
Remember those cornerbacks for Buffalo, they are banged up. So that is something to monitor.
That's facts.
Well, and just I would just say on that, just temper the expectations on all the Miami skilled players, just because they went up against the actual worst pass defense in the league last year, and they're the worst pass defense again this year. So, and you're going up against one of the top, like you were saying, Mark, one of the top defenses overall. They're good against the run. They're good against the pass. Their points per game given up is low. So I would look for, at least on the DFS side, some regression. The over-under in this game is 52.5. I look for the under in this game. So for the, I just look for a little bit. I look for those guys to come back down to earth a little bit. And I think that, and I think that Buffalo is gonna grind the clock a little bit more in this game. So that's less.
I agree with you.
That's a spicy take.
Why do you say that?
Well, a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be a shootout. A lot of people are thinking that with the speed that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle bring to the table, that's going to be hard to shut down. I agree with your take, Rob. That Buffalo defense is nasty. All I'm saying is that the volume is going to be there because Miami is going to have to move the ball. There's no shutting down this Buffalo offense, and so the opportunities are going to be there. Whether or not they can capitalize, well, that's what we're going to see.
Well, because you look at the week one, Miami against the Patriots. There was one touchdown pass there. There was just one. And so now you're looking at a defense that's probably, I would say, better than a defense that's better than the Patriots, but an offense that can put the pressure on you as well. Whereas the Patriots offense is not really, they don't really put up a lot of points. Whereas Josh Allen and the guys, I mean, they're perfect. I mentioned to Mark, I believe before the show yesterday, I think Buffalo's going to win the Super Bowl. So that's how high I am on them. And I think that I think there'll be some regression on the Dolphins offense. If that's a spicy take, I would. Okay, put it like this: I'm not playing any Dolphins in my DFS. That's in my fantasy leagues on DraftKings. So that's where I'm at on the game.
Hey Seth, will you do us a favor before we feature our next game? Could you put that question that we had up from one of the audience? There's a trade that's being proposed between Gabe Davis and James Robinson for Waddle and Jeff Wilson. You guys want to address that? What the value on that trade is for one of our listeners, Musa?
Is that say it again? James Robinson.
I don't know if you see it, but it's Gabe Davis and James Robinson for Waddle and Jeff Wilson.
You want first crack, Rob?
Okay, hold on. I'm right. So Gabriel Davis and James Robinson for Waddle and Jeff Wilson.
Yeah. What do you think of that trade?
That's actually normally when I look at these things, I kind of know right away, yay or nay. If I had to make this trade, I'm taking the Gabriel Davis and the James Robinson. James Robinson had 63% of the carries last week. Obviously, had a 37-yard touchdown run, but they seem to be bringing Travis Etienne on very, very slowly. Even though he's still, in my eyes, particularly when he's catching the ball, is a lot more explosive than Robinson. And I believe Gabriel Davis, he still practiced today. So I believe anytime they say limited, I believe they're just watching those guys their pitch count during the week. But I believe he'll be out there come Sunday. And I think Gabe Davis, I don't know how many touchdowns he had last year, but I believe it was double digits, and we all saw what he did against, I believe it was the Chiefs. So for me, I think that I'm taking Gabe, and I'm taking Robinson. But you look at James Waddle. James Waddle, I believe, had 7 targets last week, and he had, I believe it was 19 this week, 19 targets this week, and I don't foresee him being able to, being a 15 target plus guy, particularly with Tyreek Hill there. In the game script, obviously them being down by, I believe it was 28 at the half, obviously fell into, where they had nothing to lose. They were throwing the ball vertically, and it benefited Waddle. It benefited everybody in that offense, really, except for Gesicki, who actually, I think he may have scored. Did he score 1 touchdown last week?
Yeah, Gesicki still had a touchdown.
So, anyway, I just, I feel like for consistency's sake, I like the Gabe Davis and the James Robinson, because whatever they were saying in training camp about Travis Etienne, that has not been reflected in the first 2 weeks down there in Jacksonville.
Tony, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm with him. At first looking at this, it was I have to painfully say that I'd take the Gabe Davis and James Robinson side. I'm a Waddle truther. I really love Jalen Waddle. Been high on him since college. But Jeff Wilson's not going to maintain his value all season long. James Robinson, right now, there's no reason to think that he wouldn't. And then looking at the quarterbacks, I'll take Josh Allen over Tua. Just sorry, gotta.
No, I take Josh Allen almost anybody.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mark.
Yeah. No, I was just saying you would take Josh Allen over anybody. I mean, at this point. So
I still like Pat.
I mean, that's equal.
Fair.
And from a fantasy perspective, you got to give the edge to Josh Allen. He's going to get more rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think you're still theoretically trading. Well, you're trading 2 for 2, but I think I like what Josh Allen and Gabe Davis have been able to establish last year, and even going into this season. I just feel like there's going to be more consistency there, if that makes sense. Now you may say, well, the Dolphins are going to be down a lot more. The game script's going to fit Waddle, so I can understand going the other way. I would probably say if I had to put a percentage on it, I'm 65 to 70% Waddle and Robinson, taking that side of the trade than the other side. It's not like a black and white type of thing for me in this, because I understand. I feel like, well, Jeff Wilson is the part of this trade that's dragging it down, if you will. I like the other 3 guys, but I don't like Jeff Wilson.
Me either. All right. Well, listen. Why don't we talk a little bit about the Rams Arizona Cardinal game? You have a division game. You have 2 one-on-one teams facing off, both of which have been a little bit uneven, if we're being honest. On the Arizona side, you've had some injuries and some suspensions with wide receivers. And then on the Rams side, you just had some inconsistency. Even at the quarterback play, there's been some turnovers. I'd like to hear what you guys think about this game from a fantasy standpoint, and how do you think it's going to get played? Anthony, why don't you go first?
Oh, man, you're killing me. This is the one game that you had on the list that I was not looking forward to breaking down. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. The Rams defense is surprisingly given up 463 yards on the season already in the passing game, 5 touchdowns. But they've got 4 takeaways over there. They got 4 interceptions. Connor's hobbled on the Arizona side, making that backfield just way muddled. As far as the Arizona backfield goes, the way that I'm seeing this thing is that Eno Benjamin is going to get the Eno Benjamin carries, and then Darrell Williams is kind of like the James Conner replacement. He's only really going to come in when James Conner needs a sub, and they're kind of got to keep that mold. And so You're not going to get a lot of heavy workload off any single one guy. You know how bad the Arizona wide receiver core is depleted right now. They're really missing DeAndre Hopkins. You got Greg Dortch is like their best receiver right now. And then over on the flip side of the ball with the Rams, you got Akers and Henderson splitting touches. You had Henderson getting the workload in week 1, Akers in week 2. Which one's, but Henderson got the touchdown. And so which way is that going to break? That's against the Arizona defense. I want to start these guys, but it's tough to tell. Looking at this, I'm still going to lean Akers. This Arizona defense is completely modeled after a bend, don't break, except that they've been breaking. There's a lot of points to be had here on the Rams side of the ball. I think that Arizona is going to struggle to put up some points, but I think that the opportunities might be there. It's just a little scary on this one.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rob.
Well, I just look at, again, you got this is another tough game to break down. I agree with you, Anthony. This was a tough one to really dig into and be excited about for some of the reasons that you stated. I mean, you look at Henderson with 10 carries, he got the touchdown. Cam Akers had 15 carries, no touchdown. If I had to, though, one guy that I've played the last 2 weeks is Tyler Higbee. Higbee has 20 targets over the past 2 weeks, and that leads all tight ends, and he's converting those targets into catches. So it's not like he's getting peppered with a lot of targets and he's not converting them into catches. I mean, he had a couple of end zone targets that just didn't land last week. And so Stafford is looking for him outside of Cooper Kupp. I mean, for a tight end to have average 10 targets a game, that's up there with Kelsey. That's up there with Andrews, Wallers. That's elite territory. On the other side, you look at when you talk about Arizona's defense. Arizona had one of the better defenses last year, and I think you saw some of that in the second half of the Raider game. You saw it all game against Devontae Adams. He had 7 targets, only 2 catches. One of them was for a score. But you look at halftime on, they really shut them down, and they only scored 3 points the rest of the game, including the overtime session. So they look to be sort of finding their sea legs a little bit heading into week 3. So this particular game right here, forgive me and you're right about Morin. He's in the slot. Dortch is the one that caught. I'm not Morin, but Dortch. Dortch went to Wake Forest. Morin is at Wake Forest right now, playing the slot. Sorry, 2 Wake Forest guys. I got them mixed up. But Dortch is the one with the touchdown that scored the touchdown last week. And you just looking. This is the thing that I was talking to Mark, and I was concerned about week 1. Which is you just got a bunch of little guys on offense. You got little guys throwing to little guys. You need your big guys in there, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. You need him out there, and AJ just hasn't been getting the targets that you would think. But also, he's a little bit longer in the tooth, not creating the separation that you would think. He also had a touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone last week that just got slapped out of his hands. That doesn't happen 5 seasons ago. So if you're looking at this game, and if Connor is actually out, I avoid maybe everybody, even Kyler. But if I'm taking somebody, I'm taking Kyler because you just don't know where that offense is going to come from. And on the Rams side, I'm taking Higbee. I'm not going to tell you to play Cooper Kupp because obviously you're playing Cooper Kupp. But I think Higbee is a sneaky play that still not a lot of guys have been keeping up with how much of the part of the offense he's been.
Are you guys at all picking up on the fact that the Rams seem to be using Darrell Henderson for the goal line carries and short yardage situations? So even when Cam Akers is playing, it seems that he's coming out and giving way to Darrell Henderson inside the 5. Is there any real attention that you're paying to that for who you're deciding to play in that game?
Not yet. Oh, you got to remember, Akers is still coming off the injury, the Achilles, and so we just don't know how much is the team easing him back into the role, or Sean McVay has shown that he'll use a workhorse running back when he's healthy. The problem is we don't really know how healthy Cam Akers is. It takes usually 2 years to recover from a torn Achilles, and you heard Sean McVay's comments after week 1 that Akers has got to show some kind of emergency here. He's got to get in. He's got to dial in.
Yeah, so but in the meantime, Darrell Henderson's getting those short yardage carries.
Well, and he's been the more productive back. Cam Akers is averaging 3 yards a carry. Darrell Henderson's averaging around 4.5. I don't understand why they're running Cam Akers. Personally, I think Darrell Henderson needs 15 to 20 touches. Cam Akers may be the fastest back from handoff to line of scrimmage and then getting those 2 yards, and that's it. Because he looks pretty quick getting there. But Darrell Henderson to me is the guy. I don't know. And I think for me, I think the rotation of running backs is a little bit. I think it's more what the league is doing now as opposed to what's necessary. I'm more a fan of let the running back get a feel for what the line is doing. Let the line get a feel for what the running back is doing. Kind of getting that chemistry going throughout the game and letting him repeatedly feel the quarterback putting that ball in his belly, and just you have to get in a flow. I think you need touches. I think when you rotate these guys all over the place like they're doing in Denver, like they're doing with the Jets, like they're doing really all over the league. I just think you get what the Falcons did last week. Cordell Patterson was averaging 6 yards a carry. And Tyler Algier he got a DNP. Then he started this game and averaged 2 yards a carry. It blew my mind. You got a running back that was averaging 6 yards a carry. You started a guy who didn't even dress last week, and it was just totally ineffective. Nobody had, at least in the running back, in the backfield, there was no continuity from last week to this week, and that was a tougher defense last week. You saw what New Orleans did to Leonard Fournette on 26 carries. He averaged about 2 yards a carry. So I think it's overdone. Is the larger point that I'm making. I would go with Darrell. I think maybe all of us here like Darrell, but I mean that's reflected in the yards per carry. So
yeah. Well, we're getting towards the end of our show. What I like to do is a little bit of start 'em, sit 'em, or play 'em, don't play 'em. Give us a couple of things that'll help guys win their games or help guys win their DFS or whatever. Rob, we'll start with you. Give us two, and then we'll flip it over to Anthony, and he'll give us two.
Okay. My first guy is Jacoby Myers. Again, we're going to attack that Baltimore defense. They were last in passing last year. They're last again this year. It's only been 2 games, but it's still trending that way. And this is not more about Mac Jones. This is more about the defense. Last week, Jacoby Myers had 13 targets. He converted those 9 catches of 95 yards against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So I'm looking forward to, and he's only $5K on DraftKings. So that's a guy you'll see in a lot of my lineups. And then this is not an obvious play when it comes to DFS. It's more, you would think it's more obvious if season long, but sticking with, but I like Jamar Chase. Sticking with the receiver, I like Jamar Chase at 8,000. I believe he's 8,100. Jamar Chase had 5 catches last week off of 9 targets, and he didn't have any touchdowns. He's going up against the Jets, who again we're attacking. It's a theme of mine. We're attacking poor pass defenses, and I think that given the fact that the Bengals are 0-2, I think they're going to let this thing rest on Joe Burrow's arm, win or lose. And I think you can see him throw upwards of maybe 45 to 50 passes. The first week he had 10 receptions for 140 yards and a touchdown, and I think you see a bounce back week for Jamar Chase. So you'll see those 2 guys repeatedly in my lineups. I like the whole Bengals offense actually. I like Higgins, I like Mixon, and I like Burrows. I like them for a big bounce back game this weekend. So Burrows and Jacoby Myers. Jamar Chase and Jacoby Myers.
Anthony, what you got? Funny you mentioned Jamar Chase. He was one of my DFS plays as well. I like him both in Devontae Adams this week. So for some starts I'm looking at Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position going against Detroit. He's already got 498 passing yards on the season through 2 games, 78 pass attempts. Detroit is currently 27th against the pass. I think it's a slam dunk play. I'm actually benching Kyler Murray and playing Kirk Cousins in one of my leagues. Picked him up off the wire for that move. So, with Detroit, if they put any kind of production up this week like they did last week, Minnesota's going to have to throw the ball, and Justin Jefferson is going to go nuts. And then I also like TJ Hawkinson in the same game on the opposite side of the ball here. Last week, Minnesota showed that they do not want to come off that too high safety look. They were getting run over by Philly, and they still wouldn't come off the too high safety look. That is Hawkinson's territory all day long. He's going to go nuts, and Detroit's also going to have to move the ball against this Minnesota offense. So,
No, I think that's a couple of really nice picks. Before we get out of here, I'd like to address a couple of the questions. Somebody's asking about Julio Jones or picking up Kate Walker. I think that's the running back from Seattle.
Season long or DFS?
Speak to DFS, Anthony. You speak to season long.
Well, basically, it's. I mean, if Julio Jones is going to play, he didn't practice today. If he's going to play with all those guys out, you play Julio Jones. I have Kenneth Walker in my season long, and I'm starting him against the poorest Falcon run defense this weekend. I do believe he supplants Rashard Penny and takes over the number one RB there. So from a season long perspective, I like Walker a ton. Not a ton, but I like him a pretty good amount. And but if it's DFS, you got to play Julio if he plays. But I mean, given the fact that he didn't practice, if he practices Friday, it's a green light. But and given he's pretty long in the tooth, he may be getting some more time off during the. But I mean, Julio Jones has been an off injured guy, just hard to depend on. So that's at least that's what I would do.
Yeah, I'm a little bit contrarian on that one, actually. I also think that you should stick with Julio Jones for now. But as far as Kenneth Walker goes, look, I liked him coming out of Michigan State okay. I didn't think he was highly touted enough to be as highly drafted as he was. But, Rashad Penny, I just don't see a reason why the team doesn't stick with him right now. Kenneth Walker did not look like he's playing fast yet. He's looking slow out there. I'm not seeing a lot of burst. With Julio, you make a great point that he's always perpetually banged up. He's basically playing with osteoporosis at this point. But, Tom Brady needs the weapons. He's shown the willingness to trust Julio Jones in the long game. He's willing to take the deep shot, and it's Julio. For right now, I think early season, you got to stick with Julio.
Yeah, that's just if he runs out there without Mike Evans and Godwin, you play him. Even if Godwin's out there, you still got to play him. You got to play over Walker all day. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you guys about Julio. I think guys like him, they kind of give you a little bit right at the end. They give you a little punch, and you might get a little action out of him before he's done for good. Anthony, give us one of the things we want to do, because you're our Chicago Bears insider and I'm a Chicago Bear fan. Give us a little Chicago corner, which is a segment that you brought from your podcast. Bring it here. Give us a little 2-minute version on what's going on in Chicago right now.
Yeah, it's weird doing this without my sound drop. You won't let me use my sound drops. Houston coming to town. Lovey coming back home. It's going to be great. It's going to be a really boring game. Coach Eberflus has been talking about getting Darnell Mooney more involved. He's got to get Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet more involved. That's what he's talking up. I think that this would be the opportunity for it. This is the time. If we don't see it here, then that's really worrisome. Justin Fields struggled last week, only 70 yards passing. That's not going to cut it on any level whatsoever. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game unfolds. If they don't try to really game plan around Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet, you got to wonder what the heck is Lukasik doing behind the helm there. Fields has still got a lot of work to do. He's basically just going to run the offense that's called. David Montgomery, I think, could have a great game. And then this Bears defense, they like to get up to the ball. They like to get up the field. Davis Mills is, still only in his second year. This could be an interesting game from the defensive perspective. You could see some takeaways here. But on the whole, I don't expect the Texans to roll over. I expect Lovie Smith to try to grind the Bears down because it's Lovie Smith, and we know exactly how he runs his teams, right?
Right.
Dameon Pierce is one of my starts for this week. I think he's a slam dunk play against the Bears. The Bears are giving up the league worst 189.5 yards per game rushing. That's a boatload. Dameon Pierce is going to get a shot to really shine as the rookie as he did in the preseason. So, this will be a fun one to watch.
Hopefully we get the win. And Rob, why don't you give us a little bit of a closing argument and close out our first show, fantasy football show. But you can go any direction you want. It's an open forum.
Well, I'll just say, today marks the 2-year anniversary that I dropped the Falcons. Anthony, I've been following the Falcons since 1985. I was down at the Super Bowl when Eugene Robinson took that stroll down Biscayne Boulevard. We lost, Mike Vick, the dogfight, the 28-3 collapse. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me was the onside kick against Dallas 2 years ago. I believe we were up by 21 points. And so the theme that I would like to carry, to close the night with is, I hear Mark and long suffering Knick fans and just people around that they've just been long suffering. And I'll just say, don't let these albatross type teams, these albatross spirit suckers, take and break your soul. Don't let the fact that you were born someplace, people leave to go pursue new lives all the time. Just because you were born somewhere don't mean you got to root for that team. You should be able to, if you don't like the ownership or the direction, they should have to earn your love. So I would just like to join me. Since I dropped the Falcons, the Braves have won a World Series, and the Georgia Bulldogs have won a national championship. They ended a 42-year drought. And now I believe that's because the Falcons, the albatrosses, that they need to change their name to the Atlanta Albatross Spirit Suckers. If y'all don't be bogged down thinking, I was born in right here and this is the team. No, you don't. No, you don't. They don't even know you're alive. You can go pick whatever team you want to. Right now in the NFL, I'm following players. So I would just say, don't allow these teams to continue to break your soul.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I think for Chicago people, that would be a hard one to swallow, but there's a part of me that understands. Well, listen, guys, I thank you a ton for coming here, being here for this first show. You guys did amazing. I think you shared some great information with our listener. but at the same time, I think you guys I think you guys did an amazing job. But listen, I'd like for you, since you're here on YouTube, hit the like, hit subscribe, and get the notifications so you'll know when we go on. But we're going to be here every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. sharp. Oh, close to sharp as we can get. But we will definitely be here. And I'm telling you, these two guys are fantasy football superstars. They know their stuff, and they will win you some games. I'm just going to chime in here and there, but these guys are the experts. So thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Stewart, Rob Hunter, Anthony Lukasik. This is Stat Lines Matter.